Well, the Beitsa that we're analyzing did talk about a suffix, just there was a question of what kind of a suffix. So each time we interpret it one way or the other, we end up with a problem. That's what I remember. We want to try to sort it out. Can I help you with something?
I was getting my pencil.
Pencil? You have an extra pencil somewhere?
Yeah.
Matt might have something for you there.
I think this is pencil. Right? No, that's pen.
Should have a box of pencils somewhere.
Is that a pencil?
That's a pen.
They're all pens, bro. I'm sorry. There's a
How
pencil.
about in
There's
that
a little
brown?
eraser right here.
Oh.
Sharpener, pencil.
Does it work?
Yeah. Let me hold the other thing back. There you go. Yeah. Take it with you, but you might need a little plate or something to put under it. Here, this thing will work fine. Or you can just use the trash. Sure.
So I don't know if you want to put this on the video because he and I have this kind of thing where he missed the beginning of the. Okay, so tell me when you're ready.
You're on whenever you're ready.
You guys are ready. Let's see, what should we start with?
Well, I think we should go back to the beginning of the Tana Rabbanan, this Beitsa. Let me just give an introduction so that the video community can
Know where we
appreciate
are.
where we are. We're reviewing a little bit of the Gemora that was from earlier, the first sugya really of Beitsa, which is the original Mishnah, which says that a Beitsa that's born on Yom Tov is Asur according to Beis Hillel and Mutter according to Beis Shammai. There's various opinions, really four earlier opinions in the Gemora about what that is, why that Beitsa should be Asur. Some say it's because of kind of a muksa deraisa, Rashi calls it. Rabbah, it's called Hachanu de Rabbah. Rabbah holds if it was, let's say, born on the wrong day, a Shabbos before the Yom Tov, so that it was born on Yom Tov, then it was prepared on Shabbos. That's not the kind of meal that Hashem wants us to eat on Yom Tov. So in a sense it becomes what kind of a muksa deraisa according to Rabbah. That was earlier described in the Gemora, and then we had Rav Yosef and I think it was Rav Nehemiah, Rav Yitzchak, who each one says it's either Asur because it resembles fruit that fell off a tree on Yom Tov, which and Shabbos also we forbid based on the fact that a person might climb the tree to get fruit if we allow him to eat fruit that fell off the tree, or a different problem which is juice that came out of a fruit. Rashim Shazavu. There's a Gezerah in place about that, so maybe the egg somewhat represents that idea that the food came out of where it grew. But anyhow, whatever it is, the Gemora said before, there are various reasons why the egg should be asur. So now the Gemora is testing out the waters, so to speak. On Daf Gimel Amud Beis, the Gemora brings a Beitsa which seems to only work out if you take one approach of these that we mentioned and not necessarily would this Beitsa give over be possibly interpreted properly according to all the opinions. So the Gemora tries to see if we can accommodate every opinion according to the Amoraim. So I thought it started with Tana Rabbanan, it really starts with Meisvei, I think. Want to go back to that? So we're on Daf Gimel Amud Beis, about 8 lines from the top of the page. Right in the middle it says Meisvei, which means a question. They questioned something to do with the earlier Gemora, which turns out to be these 3 opinions that we just spoke out.
Meisvei, so we're talking about a problem. Beitsa Shenolda B'Shabbos. ואחד Beitsa Shemilyotzei. Either an egg that was born on Shabbos or an egg that was born on Yom Tov.
Right? Either one.
And the Taltim also.
We're not allowed
To move it.
on either Shabbos or Yom Tov or Muksa, let's say.
Or access ball, you cannot cover it.
No, to use it to cover with it. Lechasos means to cover. Ba means with it. That's one of the meanings of the prefix base. It's either in something or with something. Like we say on Friday night, Bim and Madliki means with what do we light? With what are we supposed to light? With what materials are we supposed to light? So a base can mean with. You're not allowed to cover with it, right? You can't use this egg to cover what?
For the egg.
Lechasos ba es
It's hakli.
hakli. You can't use the egg to cover what? A kli. How could you use the egg to cover a kli? The most simple case would be a bottle. Very often a bottle has an opening which is about the size of the tip of the egg. So if you place the egg directly on top of the bottle, it kind of keeps any foreign object out. It's a makeshift cover for the bottle. So that you're not allowed to do. Okay. What else are we not allowed to do? We're also not allowed to. So just let's talk about lismoch.
To support, right?
Correct. Ba,
In it.
again, with it.
With it.
Just like we had before, L'chasos ba means to cover with it. You can't cover anything with it. So too you can't support anything with it.
With it.
Hmm?
We want to take a little break.
Okay. Let me just take off my jacket. A bit hot. Whew. Only 2 coffees, it should be okay. But I'll just finish my coffee. Okay, so we had some simple halachas so far. You have to treat it like muksa, so you can't use it for any purpose. Let's continue then.
Our kofa alea is a key. You could cover alea, cover on top of it is a key.
Right. Kofa really means to push down.
Turn over,
Like
Uh-huh.
we talk about kafiyas hayetzer, pushing, subduing our yetzer. So kef kefufim, someone who's pushed down, right? Kafuf. So kofa aleh, when you have to push down on top of it a kli,
Turn over, right?
it's also means that. That's correct.
Shrill low tishbon, all shouldn't break.
Yeah. So basically, you're allowed to use another kli to protect it.
Sorry, Matt, do you have the sharpener?
What happened to it?
Give it back to you.
Did you drop it in the trash? Did you sharpen it over the trash?
Yeah.
That would be my first place to look. Sorry, bro. That's usually how it happens when you work over the trash. It goes in.
I guess so.
That's a smart guy. Are all my documents still in the other room? I forgot to bring them in.
Oh, okay. I'll grab them.
I left some on a table and on the beam. I think we should bring them all in.
Okay, I'll grab them.
Thank you.
There it is.
Found it?
Found it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Wish was also up there.
No, not good.
Well, maybe we got some extra tea.
I made.
It's hard with work. I davening from the Talmud.
I know.
Persistent guy running around.
I've got just to do a better job of davening here during the day.
That's right, Alrighty, so what were we saying here? That you can't use it for anything, but you can protect it with another kli. Rashi says that's a certain kiddush, because there is a shita amongst the Tanoim that you're not allowed to move one kli for the sake of muksa. This is a kind of a muksa. Beitsa is being described here as a kind of a muksa. Then you would have imagined, according to that sheet, you're not allowed to move a kli for its sake either. Right?
Yeah.
There's the chiddush that no, this price is going according to whomever is not of that opinion, that you are actually allowed to protect the muksa with a kli. So you're moving one kli for the sake of muksa. You're allowed to do that according to this shita, but there is another shita that will forbid it. Okay, let's keep going. That's not the main part of our Gemora. Next two steps are very important. First of all,
Sveka Asura.
which would theoretically mean what?
Sveka is a suffix.
What? It is a suffix. It's suffix.
It's suffix.
In other words, like this same case that we've been discussing, if it were a case of a suffix instead of a certainty, it would only be a suffix, then it would have been usr.
It's suffix.
So, what do you think it means? Which kind of suffix are we talking about?
Suffix Mucha.
Meaning, this egg, which so far the Beitsa has described the egg as being a kind of a muksa, right? Just because it was born on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Sounds a lot like Rav Nachman's shita, right? Actually, when we originally described it. So now we're saying, if you have a suffix about this egg, what do you think a suffix would be?
Suffix Mucha. No, suffix Mucha.
If it was really Nolad on Yom Tov, right? You came in, you found it there, you're not sure if it was born on Yom Tov or before Yom Tov, on Shabbos or before Shabbos. So, according to that, the Gemora is saying, if you have a suffix about this egg, i.e. you don't know if it was born on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, maybe it was born on Chol and you're allowed to use it. So what do you do if you have a suffix?
There was suffix,
It says in the Beitsa, Sveika, Asura. You have to treat it as if it's what?
It's
Asur. So, and why would you think that is? That's going to be the question of the Gemora. This same egg that we're talking about, and now we're saying we have a suffix about it.
Ooh, good.
Shalom, shalom.
It's the tangerine man.
That's right. Okay.
You should know, fortunately or fortunately, your home and Nafshi, big hit.
Big hit.
There are almost none left. Now there's none left.
Very gratified.
They were a hit.
Great.
They were a hit. And by the way, I got a WhatsApp from Shabbatai,
Yeah.
hoping he'd say the operation was a success.
Yeah.
And he said they haven't even had the operation yet. They're still waiting. Don't even know really what's happening.
Preliminaries. Yeah. Sometimes they postpone it. Sometimes they cancel it.
Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous, but okay.
It
In
happens.
the meantime, he
Yeah.
said he's crammed into a little room with all these people in there, probably Arabs. And I hope the video's on.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we hope we have a good editor on this one. So now we'll have to figure out. It'll be up to the editors what to do with this clip.
Well, I stopped and started, so I know where it is.
All right. Anyhow, just to finish with the Sruli on this part, Sruli,
Yes.
that's going to be the big proof of the Gemora. Why would you say the suffix is usher if it's just a Rabbanan? What are you looking for? No, we
Something else.
went back. We have a rule, Sruli and I, that when nobody else is here, he and I try to make up an earlier part of the Masechta that he missed out on, so that eventually, I don't know if it's really attainable, but we're going to try to catch him up so when if we ever make a siyum, he'll be able to participate.
Steven told me the no cheshbonos.
Okay, so where are we?
Steven
No, so we'll go back to where you and I, where we all were, which was on Daf
I think
Lamed.
he told me Kalker the cheshbon said to him the cheshbon.
Does he still have that big thick book? The Reb Nachman book,
I
that
haven't seen him
huge?
using it.
Yeah, on the base.
All right.
All right. How are you doing today?
BH.
So far, so good.
Well, the highlight of my day yesterday was riding on the bus with
Oh. Wow.
You don't ride the bus that much, right? Once in a
you.
blue
2 stops, but that's enough.
Yeah, that's enough. 2 stops. 2
Keeps
amazing
me-
stops.
Keeps me tided over.
Right.
All right, anyhow, maybe we'll get another chance today.
Hell of a shot. That's great.
So, yesterday we were learning about various forms of basically taking things apart, taking walls apart even, right? That's something we've never dreamed we're going to talk about on Yom Tov, taking a wall apart on Yom Tov,
Okay.
right? I think it's something to write home about actually. Learned about a wall, you're allowed to take apart a wall to get to the food.
Makes sense.
Pretty astounding stuff.
Yes, it is.
And then we have to explain, but it's only talking about a wall that was put together brick on top of brick, but no cement, no mortar. So it's not officially in halacha. The only question was muksa, we said, and we dealt with that question as well. We said basically that's another huge whopping kiddush, at least for Rabbi Meir, that if it was for the sake of reaching food, according to Rabbi Meir, the Rabbanim will let you be over the Isser Muksa as well. Right? Take those bricks, open up the wall, which is in a malacha, but it might have been muksa. We say, no, it's muksa, but the Rabbanan let you move this muksa for the sake of getting to the food.
Doesn't depend on what kind of food. Whether it's barbecue chips or not.
I don't know. Maybe even for tangerines, I don't know.
That would hard to believe.
It says fruit.
Barbecue chips.
Right.
Big titles for chips.
I think you need to watch some of the Super Bowl commercials. They're all about Doritos and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think your mind is probably fixated on the barbecue. A new barbecue Doritos out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We gotta find out.
And now I know who they're aiming for. They're aiming for guys like you.
That's right. That's it. Yeah, falafel chips, all kinds of stuff. I've never heard this in America.
They have one where they found they have a new Pringles out, where each one is pizza, one is. So they figured out this guy came with his incredible new flavor, and this one came with his. They figured out then they stacked them all together and they ate them as a triple decker Pringle with all three flavors, and that was like another
Mind blower.
commercial you have to watch.
Yeah.
You have to watch the Pringles and the Doritos.
Yeah.
I'll figure out later on if there's other ones you have to watch.
Sounds really TV too, I'm sure.
I doubt it. These are special ones. They work on the whole year just for these special ones for the Super Bowl. It's called the Super Bowl commercials. They like spend millions of dollars on these things, not just to make them, but just to order a spot, like even a short spot.
30-second spots,
Like-
over $1 million.
Yeah,
Really?
like really huge.
Wow.
Give their money to charity. Anybody of those.
Yeah, that's your department. You have to get them to donate.
Or to Calgary to donate.
Find some of these guys. Find some
Give
of
you
these
5
guys.
seconds free.
Then you do.
Tsama Nafshi, come to Tsama Nafshi.
Then you get your
We'll
cost.
get Matt's omelets.
Amen.
We'll get a 5-second spot.
With the advertising of the day.
Huh?
The new Jewish heads in the advertising of the day.
Probably full of Jews.
Sure.
We just have to make sure they're not on anyone's list. Today, all these Jews who used to be favored are in scandalous things, being attacked left and right. You have to be sure who you're dealing with. You'll end up on the scandal list.
What else celebrating Jews?
People who are embarrassed to be Jewish. They'll protect every other minority except for Jews. They'll protect the Palestinians, the blacks, the Hispanic, the transgender. Am I missing anyone?
Because they don't see us as downtrodden. They don't see us as the
We're not
underdog.
anymore, no.
We are the top of everything.
Yeah.
How can we
We're
be an
now
underdog?
We're now the Nazis, that's what they say. We're the Nazis.
What are the liberals?
Mostly.
Yeah, but when you eat Pringles, it erases all that stuff. Everything gets erased. Even though
Yeah.
I can be bad.
Jack is saying if you ever have to try to appeal to them to give Torah, just bring a few Pringles along. That's what Matt has to remember. He's going to be in Georgia in a few months, pitching the Yeshiva.
Amen.
Nice, you're fit.
Maybe you have a few friends in Georgia for him to talk to. Atlanta.
Atlanta, yes.
Can
Do
we
you
spend
have
a
license?
week in Atlanta?
Georgia.
Back to the other license.
Atlanta's in Georgia.
Driver's license.
Yeah, I know.
It's expired. I have to get it redone when I'm there.
It is.
But I'll get
I
one.
was there.
Yeah, driver's Atlanta.
It's a great place.
He says Atlanta's a great place. Jack's going to
Been
be your
there?
key.
Been there before?
Absolutely. I need to sit down with you for a few minutes, sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we'll.
Everything is country over there.
Uh-huh.
Big estates. Each house is like, 3 acres. This is unbelievable. That's just from the playing field.
When's the last time you were back there, Jack? When's the last time you were back?
Wow.
My wife has a daughter.
A couple of years.
Oh,
Hadn't been to Atlanta in 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
he says his wife has a daughter who lives
Lives in
there.
Atlanta.
Single?
They're all Chabadniks. They're all Chabadniks there. No shlichus there.
You don't love the Beitsa?
Well, are they the kind
Going
of
over
providers who
Pesach.
still
What?
give to us, or
I'll
they're
be
the
in
kind
Savannah
who
for
are,
Pesach and then Atlanta for the next week.
That's the problem.
You
He's a few people who,
have
I
any
don't think it was
contacts?
5
Recruiting
minutes
and collecting.
commercial, it's also good.
Making the contacts, yes. I'll have appointments set up, God willing.
You know people there?
Well, through the people that I'm talking to, I'm starting to get names and numbers. It's starting to actually come
Network.
together a little bit, yeah. Baruch Hashem.
Alright. Right, Maid Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah for Met.
My names and numbers.
The maid.
But then the names and numbers I have, they're going to ask you for a donation.
Well, I guess we're not going to deal with them then. But, hopefully, maybe they'll know some people that can introduce them. All right, we're ready to turn the video on.
You're on, yes, sir.
All right, so we've now sprung back to our previous page, which is on Amud Aleph, Amud Beis. We had a Mishnah which presented two chidushim. One, the Tanna Kama said that if there was fruit behind a wall, that you would have thought the person doesn't relate to it because it's behind a wall, and somehow the wall opens up on Yom Tov, you're allowed to take from that fruit. It's not called muksa, because the wall that we're talking about is a kind of a wall that doesn't have cement between the bricks, so it's not like a permanent wall, it's just stacked up, and therefore you're allowed to undo it, theoretically, but the Tanna Kama just says he's not telling you you're allowed to do it, but if it does happen, the fruit that's behind that wall is not muksa. Because in a certain sense, in your mind, you were still attached to that fruit. But Rebbe Meir goes one step further and says you're actually allowed to take apart that wall, because first of all, it's not a malacha d'oraisa, we said, since there's no real cement, just bricks stacked one on top of the other, and the problem that the brick should have been muksa. In the end, the Gemora answers that might be true, but for the sake of ochel nefesh, to allow you to eat the food that's stored behind that wall, according to Rebbe Meir at least, and the Tanna Kama might be arguing exactly on that point, but according to Rebbe Meir, he's allowing you to take it apart even in order to get to that fruit. Now the Gemora goes into other cases of different doorways and different things where things might be stored behind that door. What can I do to open up that door? So it's related to the Mishnah at least somewhat. So yesterday we started this section, right? Should we go back and review that, gentlemen? Amar Shmuel, first words on the line, Amar Shmuel, like about 12 lines from the bottom of the page. Excuse me? That's right, that part about Chotamot. You have it, Sruli?
So we're talking about why is it part of the question of Rebbe Meir, right?
Excuse me?
So how come it's Rebbe Meir? Why is Rebbe Meir allowed to open up the wall to take the fruit?
Yes, that was the question before. I tried to review it so we can start the new section, but if you want to review it again...
Yeah, no, it's on the wrong page.
Well, it does help to be on the right page, no question. Okay, so...
Ready.
Was that fine, the review we gave already on that subject? Do you want to go over it again?
Just go over it again.
Okay, so why, according to Rebbe Meir, you're allowed to take the wall apart. Why isn't it a malacha d'oraisa, the Gemora says? Because, you remember the answer we gave yesterday? Even the day before, when we read the Mishnah, Rashi mentioned it in the Mishnah as well. We're talking about a special kind of a wall that what?
Well, it was really broken down.
No, not really broken, but just not completely built. Yeah, it says the word avira delivni, like airspace that's between the bricks. But the truth is, if they're stacked one on top of the other, I don't think there's going to be that much airspace. But maybe if you look, with a very good magnifying glass, you'll see a bit of airspace there. Because the main thing is that they're only stacked on one upon the other, and they're not what? Glued together, cemented together, right? Sruli?
Yes.
That's why it's not a what? To take apart that wall is not what? Is not a d'oraisa, right? It's not a malacha d'oraisa. The only thing left then is an isser d'rabbanan. What's the isser d'rabbanan? The Gemora says, based on Rav Nachman, right? We have a statement of Rav Nachman. Remember Rav Nachman's statement?
These balls are spotting that have been under the space between the bricks, right?
Sorry, where are you?
Hayir Livni, The Isyaser.
No. Two units together are pronounced I.
Isur.
Correct. What's the root of that word?
Remaining.
Correct. Like the word yoter or yeter, miyutar. So we're talking about the first part of Reb Nachman's statement. He's talking about bricks that are what?
Remaining.
After what?
Structure.
Structure.
Mi binyana, right? The next word, from the building.
After the
Right after they finished building, there was bricks left over. But we have to say, in retrospect, these bricks were not neatly stacked one upon the other. Because that's the next case, as Reb Nachman talks about, what if they are neatly stacked? So we're talking about here, they're left over and what? Strewn about. Right? They're not piled one on top of the other nicely, they're just sort of strewn about. Let's say on this, at the construction site itself, they're still just strewn about. So what's the halacha according to Reb Nachman?
Shori letal to linu. B'shabasa.
You're allowed to what?
Carry it, remove them on the Shabbos.
To move them around. You're allowed to move them around however you want to move them on, even on Shabbos, right? Not just on Yom Tov, but even on Shabbos. Okay?
Yes.
So are they muksa?
No.
No. They're muksa, you wouldn't be allowed to move them. So once we say you're allowed to move them, that's another way of saying they're not muksa. Why are they not muksa? According to you. Why aren't they muksa?
So Malachim says you let them move them.
Because they're what?
You let transport them. You let them,
But why? Why aren't they called muksa?
because they're just remaining, not glued down together.
They're only remaining, but what are they? They have a new job, or they have the old job?
Old job.
Well, the old job was for building, then they should be muksa. They're for building. Are they still for building?
No.
No. They're just strewn around near the old building site, but they're not really, he's not intending to use them for building anymore. So what are they going to be used for now? So he says why? Hoil.
Hoil, the chazir,
You have the place, Jack? This word hoil is at the end of the line. So you want to get towards the left. The very last word in the line. Find the word hoil. What?
Here it is. Neshabata hoil.
Right. So it's really, what does it say? Hoil?
the chazir, the mazka.
Lamizga. So what is the word hoil?
Since
Correct. Since what?
we are fitting,
Fitting for what?
to be strewn upon, not to lie down upon
To
them.
lie down upon them, right? In other words, you could set them up in as a flat surface. That would be like a kind of a hard mattress, as it were.
This is the mizga alayu means to lie
To
down.
lie down, alayu means upon them, upon these bricks. So I guess you'd have to arrange the bricks in a nice way. You'd have to, right, put one next to the other and leave the flat surface sort of as the top of the mattress. But if you did that, then they'd have a function, right? So we say that is the key to the halachas of muksa. If something has no function, it should be muksa. Or if it has a function that's usser, even more so. But if it has a mutter function, its job is a mutter thing, then it's not muksa, right? It all depends on what its job is, right?
Yes.
So what's the job of these bricks now that they've been left over from the building?
So he
What's the real job of these bricks we just said?
just to be strewn about.
Their job, what's their job?
How much?
Goyim like to be just strewn about, but that's not called a function. It's called after they finish drinking, they're just strewn about. What these bricks, if they have a function, you're allowed to move them means they must have a function. They're not muksa, right? If they were muksa, you wouldn't move them. It says you can move them. If you can move them, it means they have a function. What's their function? You just read it, by the way.
To be arranged upon each other.
No, not arrange. Where did you get the word arrange?
Lie who, right? So he knew.
Upon them. Alaya just means upon them. What are you doing upon them?
Lying down.
Lying. You are lying down.
pillows.
You are lying down.
Lying down on the bricks.
Right.
Like pillows, right? Pillows.
Or a mattress, or like you put them in a flat surface, right? Like this table. Would you be willing to sleep on this table? Right? Not if you had your druthers, but if you had to, right? If you had nothing else to do at night, where would you sleep?
On the table.
You lie down on the table. It's a hard, flat surface, but that's
You guys sleep on the table?
better than lying down on something that's not a hard, flat surface, right?
You guys sleep on the table?
As far as what's concerned.
No, I sit on the table, right?
So you're saying it's like a mizbeach, you treat
Yeah.
it with covered, like a mizbeach, but better than lying down on the floor. I imagine you're allowed to lie down on the table to go to sleep, or the other thing you lie down on is the floor. I don't think that we tell you to lie down on the floor. You might want to treat the table with respect, but lying down on it probably is still okay. You think it's better to lie down on the floor? You'd be allowed to lie down on the table if need be. Anyhow, okay. So let's get back to the point in hand. These bricks that Reb Nachman's talking about, are they muksa?
No.
No, because he said you are what?
No,
Shari. He said Shari.
Metal tzilim l'shas.
Shari.
Metal permitted to move them around Shabbos.
Correct. So if you're allowed to move them around, are they muksa? But what purpose do they have? Why shouldn't they just be like regular rocks that are muksa? To be able to move them, they have to have a function. What's their function? Do they have a function, these bricks?
No.
Yes, they do. Chazi, they're fit to what?
To be arranged
To do what? Lemizga.
alive.
That means what? To...
Lie down upon him.
That's right. So do they have a job?
Yes.
Yes. What's their job?
You can be arranged so you can lie down upon him.
That's right. It's like they're like a makeshift mattress. They could be made into a mattress, as it were, or maybe a pillow. I don't know. Right? But one way or the other, they have a function. Having a function takes them out of the category of muksa, right?
Yep.
So now we understand half of Reb Nachman's statement. They're not muksa because they have a function. What's their function? You could use them to lie down upon. Just like a mattress or pillow. Right? Okay? Now, that's if they're just strewn about. That means you don't care really what happens to them, and therefore you just use them for whatever. But if what? Sharginhu,
Sharginhu means if they are arranged.
Rashi said it means, that's right. They are arranged one upon the other. In other words, you stack them neatly. You stack them neatly.
Given what I had today, I'm sorry.
I'm very tired today. Here, cold tooth. Okay, so what were we saying? Sharginhu, which means they're not just strewn about, but rather he specifically what? Arranged one on top of the other. He left them stacked neatly, as it were. Then it's a different evidence of his thoughts. Right? We have evidence that his thoughts are what? Truly?
Vada Ikitsuhu, Rabbi Sunni arranged it.
No, that does not mean arranged.
Oh. Rashi said that he had a man, he had a man to build, and the base for building, right?
you're leaving out one important word, the word muksa,
Muktzah.
right? Maktzan, or the Gemora's word aktzinhu. I don't hear a proper translation of that word. Are you aware that you kind of skipped over that word? It's an important word in Hilchos Muksa.
He made it Muktzah.
Yes, but it's more than just making something muksa. He actually designated it. That's another word, meaning of muksa, right? We said, you know how it relates to this word muksa, by the way? How do you get designated out of the same word as muksa? You know how you get it? Jack, what do you think? You like etymology of words? Do you like how words evolve, as it were?
It's an interesting thing.
Let's concentrate on the root of this word. What's the root of the word? Can you see a word inside of there that's like a famous word?
You mean the accent?
So pick out in there, like diamonds from the dust, a word that's hidden in there that you do know. Not just from Hilchos Muksa, but from other places. You ever heard of the word kitzoni?
Extremist.
Correct.
Extremist.
Or Kates HaMizbeach, or Kates HaYamin.
End of days. And
Correct. So think of the two words you just said.
Yeah.
What are the two words you just said? Extreme and the end. So can you think of the word, what the real root of that word is? Kates. What does Kates really mean?
finale.
You're close. Again, a lot of times you have a word that means one real thing and other related, almost metaphorical things. You know what a real Kates is? You ever heard of the katzeh? Katzeh ha'acharon. Katzeh. That's what...
That's the person.
No. What do you think katzeh is? A katzeh.
Harvester.
No, that's, you're thinking of the word katsir. Katsir chitim is called the harvest. That's correct, but it's not this word. Might be related. I think Rev Hirsch says most words, even that we talked about having a three-letter root, but really it boils down to 2 letters. Based on earlier Rishonim, actually, I think the Radal holds that way or whatever, but... In any event, okay, so a katzeh. You know what a katzeh is? An edge. An edge. Like this. This is the katzeh of the table. Okay? From that comes all these other words that we're talking about now. Let's think of the other words that we mentioned. Kitzoni.
Extreme.
An extreme person. Why is he an extreme? He's all the way at the very edge. Right? He's all the way up to the very end, right? Most people are like in the middle. Normal people have the middle of the road views. The Kitzoni is all the way at the very end. All the way by the edge, as it were. Okay?
And someone is someone to the left or to the right, right? Extreme left or to extreme right.
There are extremes that are to the left or to the right, correct. But that's not what we're talking about now. We're just talking about the idea that the word katzeh means an extreme edge. An edge. It's the edge. It's the end of something, right? It's where the thing ends. There's an edge. Okay? That's where the word kitzoni comes from, an extremist. He's like way off in the end. That's, by the way, where the word muksa comes from. Because something is muksa, it's been pushed off to the edge. Right? Let's say most things I use are like in the central part of my life. Things I don't really intend to use because they're not functional or usher or whatever the reason, I pushed off to the edge. So that's muktzah. It's been pushed off to the edge, right? With the rule that an u sound in the middle of a word makes it an adjective, right? Muzman, something was invited. Muktzeh, it was pushed off to the edge, basically, of one's existence, of one's thought process. That's why we talk about things that you don't want to use as being muktzah, because it's like you pushed them way off, out of your normal boundaries of usage. And what was the other one we talked about? Kates HaYamin, right? The end of days. Again, it's like the very edge of history, the very end of history. Okay? So here as well. The word we're dealing with here is aktzinhu. that he designated them, right? Because when you designate something as well, you're pushing it off to a specific spot that's like at the very end of your existence. What did he do here? He set it aside to do what? What do you think he did this for?
Designated it.
What for what? Rashi says one more word. That's right. When we come and we see all the bricks that were left over after the first building was built, and they weren't just left strewn about, they were stacked up nicely. Stacking up nicely means you intend to use them again. That's why you want to keep them nice and clean and pristine and whatever. So that's why you stack them up. It also helps to transport them, right? If something's stacked neatly, you can transport it easily. So that's a sign, Rashi says, that what? That he's designated them, he sort of pushed them off to the edge. He doesn't want to use them in his normal day-to-day life anymore. He wants to push it off, but this time for what? For the next building, right? Like many builders, they build one place and the next, and they're already thinking of building the next place. Okay? Truly?
Yes.
Okay. So what are we saying here? Let's just be clear. Reb Nachman is making a statement that what? If you have, let's say, a construction site where they finished building the building, but there's a lot of material still strewn about. Right? You've ever been to a construction site after they finish building? There's a lot of rubble, right, around in the yard.
They're building the new road.
Yep, that's right. So there's always bound to be materials that are somewhat in the area strewn about. So Rav Nachman's speaking about some of those materials, specifically the bricks that were strewn about, or the rocks, the square rocks that are used as bricks for the building. And what does Rav Nachman say about them? Can you use them on Shabbos or Yom Tov? It depends. Right? It depends. That's what Rav Nachman's saying in essence, right? He's not saying definitively no, and he's not saying definitively yes. Because it depends. What does it depend on? His intention. If he's intending to what? Use them for a building, he wants to keep them in the building business, so to speak, then they are usher, right? Because that's an usher activity, so obviously it's considered muksa. Okay, something that's designated for an usher activity is muksa, right? That's when we look at muksa. One of the things that makes something muksa is that its only real usage is something that's usher. So if these bricks are for something that's usher, which is a building, then they're muksa. Okay? But how do I know? How do we know if he intends to use them for the building? He's finished this building, and all the materials that are around, do we assume they're for the next building, or we assume they're just going to throw it out?
Assume it's going to
Depends. It depends.
Looks like that.
That's true. But how can we know if we come across and we see them what? Says Rav Nachman, stacked up nicely, then we know he's probably what? Intending
to use them again.
Use them again for the next building. So that's a case where he says they are considered muksa, right? But if they're not stacked up nicely, what's the opposite of stacked up nicely? They're just strewn about. Then Rav Nachman's machadish that even though till now they were for building, and they are just bricks or rocks really, so then should I consider them muksa?
Should you consider no?
We say no. Why? Because they have a new function. What's their new function?
Using this arrangement so you can lie it down and use them as a mattress.
That's right. Use it as a mattress or a pillow, whatever. So therefore they have a function. They have a function, and they're no longer for building, but they're also not just rocks, because they have a function. Regular rocks don't have a function. So therefore they're not muksa, says Reb Nachman. Okay? Now, originally we were talking about a wall where the bricks are stacked up, according to Gemora, according to Shmuel actually, he said before, that our Mishnah is talking about a wall where the bricks are stacked up one on top of another to create that wall. But there's no what?
There's no cement.
There's no cement, there's no mortar, there's nothing keeping the bricks together. So then we said already a long time ago that there's no Isser D'Oraisa taking that wall apart. The only thing the Gemora is now trying to investigate is what about Muksa? Aren't they still Muksa? So what would you say? These bricks that are part of a wall, even if they're not cemented together, are they Muksa or not? What would you think?
Depends.
I like your approach. Okay.
Excellent answer.
But what does it depend on? Now you have to back it up a bit.
But if you had them out of the building or front
They're
of
part of a building. They're a wall, right? They're in a wall right now. I think he intends for them to be part of the building because they're part of a building already. So what do we say? They should be muksa because that's what we see from Reb Nachman. If they're supposed to be part of a building, they're muksa. If they have some new function, like they become your new pillow or your new mattress, that's fine. They're not muksa. But if they're still building blocks, as it were, they're muksa. So then how could, that's the Gemara's question, how could Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah tell you you're allowed to take this wall apart? What happened to the Yisur of muksa? Good?
Yes.
So now we're ready for the
We'll
Gemara.
go for Nachman's approach.
That's right, we want to hear Reb Nachman's approach. Amar Rabbi Zera, want to try it, Jack? First words in the line, Amar Rabbi Zera. Find it? Want me to help? Okay, so let's stop there. What's he saying? It's either Amru or Amro. So wait, just slow, before you get to that, what's he saying? Let's just talk about the straightforward meaning. So it's either Amru, they said, or Amro, he said it. Pretty similar, just a question whether you're talking about a group of people, they said, or singular, he, the person we're talking about, he said it. So who's under attack here? Do we know who's under attack in this Gemora? Who Rabbi Zera is coming to defend? Truly. You know who we've been attacking the whole time? Rabbi Meir. So now Rabbi Zera comes to defend him.
It's funny because this is after Bava Kama in the morning.
Very similar, except I was thinking that in the morning, it was Rabbi Avo who was defending Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Zera came to attack. Okay, but yeah, it's very interesting. We have both 2 out of the 4 people of the morning sugya in this sugya, Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Meir. We're learning a sugya in the morning in Bava Kama where Rabbi Meir made a few statements about the kusim, and the Gemora says they seem to be contradictory about whether he looks at them as what we call Geirei Emes or Geirei Arayos, whether they're true, proper converts and therefore Jewish, or they're not and therefore they're going. So we found contradictory statements in Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Avo says really he holds that they're Jews, their conversion was a proper conversion, but he treats them as goyim upon occasion when he wants to dissuade them from living near the Jews because they don't keep our ways, etc. Right? They basically only keep Torah Shabbat, like the Karoim or like the Sadukim, and therefore they're best to keep at bay. So then Rabbi Zera comes to attack that. So it's very interesting that here we have a question about Rabbi Meir, and all of a sudden Rabbi Zera is actually stepping into the fray like in the morning. Okay, now, but here, so if Rabbi Zera is saying a statement, Jack, you were saying before it's either Amru or Amro. What would you think now? If the person under attack was Rabbi Meir, then would it be more likely to have someone defend him and say he said it, he said his statement, and start to defend him by explaining his statement? Does that make sense? You hear my question?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about it.
Okay, you're allowed to think. I don't want to take away your time for thinking. I'll give you all the time you need if it's just to think. Okay, thank you. Talk later. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sorry it was so hard.
No worries. I had it all written. I just had to find it.
Okay, good.
Y'all have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Take care.
See you tomorrow.
Be well.
Take care from Rosh.
Good night.
Cheers, Matt.
Good night. Good night.
As my grandmother used to say, nighty nighty, shirty shirty. She had a nice way of saying it though.
Alrighty then.
Very polite.
It's a good man.
Special guy, very special guy.
When did you start working with Yeshiva though?
Huh?
When did you start actually working?
About a year ago. Started small, and he's been doing more and more, Baruch Hashem. Yeah.
Also started small.
It's good, you know. Everything should start manageably small and then grow when it's appropriate.
Rashi started small.
That's right. I think how much Rashi, when he gets Solom Haba, how much schar for all the Chumash he explained in Tanakh and all the Gemoras, unbelievable.
I don't have to worry about the cleaning jobs anymore, they're finished.
Okay. Well,
Came and went.
now you can clean people's pockets.
That's it.
Alright, so let's get back to the question at hand. Let's just review the Gemora, I think, in a simple way, and I think Rabbi Zera's answer will start to take care of itself. If we just understood the question that was upon the table. Let's just step back a moment and get perspective, okay? What did the Mishnah say? Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah said what? Do you know what Rabbi Meir said in the Mishnah, Jack? You can review if you want. You see Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah?
You see Rabbi Meir Omer Af Oteach
L'chachila. So the question in the Mishnah before Rabbi Meir was, there was fruit stored up in a house of some sort,
Okay.
and the Tanakama only spoke about what happens if a hole opens up, let's say, in the wall. Are you allowed to take from the fruit?
Yeah.
Or is it muksa? Because it was behind a wall, and off limits, as it were, so maybe it's still muksa. He says no. Tanakama says you're allowed to take from the fruit.
Okay.
But he doesn't, all he says about the wall is that if the wall opens up by itself, it seems from the Tanakhama you're not allowed to actually take matters into your own hands and take apart that wall to get at the food that you need. If it happens somehow by itself, then you're allowed to sort of benefit from that. But you're not allowed to actually open up the wall yourself. Came along Rabbi Meir and said, no, even lechatchila you could what? Open up that wall, basically take apart a wall, which the more immediately asks, how can you take apart a wall? That's a malacha called soiser. Taking apart a proper building is asur on Shabbos and even on Yom Tov, right? It's one of the 39 malachas.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Gemora answers, as we've discussed a few times,
Ami'ai haka satir.
where are you reading from now?
Gemara.
You're asking, the Gemara's kasha, right? The Gemara's kasha was,
Amai.
how, in other words, why or how could Rabbi Meir have said you're allowed to take apart this wall?
Haka satir.
Sata, right? He is destroying, right? That's really what the word soser means, to destroy. Which, if you think about it, also it's interesting that phonetically it's the same word. Destroy has the str in the middle, right? The main part of the word destroy is like str in the middle. Soter.
Okay.
So even the word destroy has the word soter in it, which is interesting. Anyhow, okay, so the Gemara asks, how could Rabbi Meir have allowed you to take apart that wall? He's doing a malacha called soter, which is one of the 39 malachas. It's clearly listed as one of the 39 malachas in the Gemora and Shabbos.
Yeah.
Right? You know where all the malachas are listed in Shabbos, right? You know where you can find all the malachas if you ever want to look up all 39 malachas, by the way? You know where to find it?
Mizbeach.
Huh?
For the Mizbeach.
Okay, that's how we learn out the malachas from the Mishkan, you mean? But no. Where in all of Shas can I just look it up quickly if I want to find all the 39 malachas? You know where? It's good to know. If you ever want to look up something, right? Obviously, there's Shulchan Aruch where you can actually learn of the real halachas in the Mishnah Berurah, but if you just want a quick run through of all the 39 malachas, where do you find such a list? It's a handy list to have, right? You know where you find that list? Of course, in Masechah Shabbos.
What you could do, what you can't do.
What you can't do, right?
Yeah.
Once I tell you the 39 you can't, then you can pretty much figure out what you can do. But that doesn't. It's not all inclusive because there are prohibitions to Rabbanan, etc., which doesn't always work. That whatever's not considered a malacha is mutter. But okay, let's say it is. Okay, so the main thing is, how do I know what 39 malachas are? Where do I find it truly?
Masechah Shabbos.
Masechah Shabbos. And where in Masechah Shabbos?
Good question, I know.
I try to ask good questions. Sometimes I succeed. Thank you for telling me this was a good question. What do you think? Have you ever seen it before?
Never done Shabbos.
Well, this is one thing I would suggest everybody do, because you have to be familiar with the 39 malachas. How are you supposed to be careful every Shabbos not to do malachas if you don't even know what the 39 malachas are? So a very handy book, by the way, is this book that came out by Rabbi Chait, or Baruch Chait. He's also a singer, a famous singer, and he's a big rabbi as well, I think in the HaYeshiva. He came up with this book. It's almost like a cartoon book for children, but it's so good because she drew every single malacha practically also in our day-to-day things, and also he put next to each one, whether it's asur mid'oraisa, mid'orabanan, or mutter. Very good. It looks like a kid's book, but the truth is, we used to have a rabbi here who used it in his shiurim because it's just very informative, and he very well researched. It's extremely well laid out and easy to follow as well. So if you have that book, fine. If you don't have that book, at least look up just to see what the 39 malachas are. Every Jew should at least know the list. So if you want to find it, which I do suggest it as a recommended reading, it's a Masechah Shabbos. Now, it is a Mishnah, by the way. So it's in the 7th parak of Shabbos, which should be easy to remember, because Shabbos is the 7th day of the week, right? That you guys knew, right? So it makes sense that this list of the 39 malachas would be in the 7th parak, as at least a nice mnemonic device. But there's another thing to remember. It's not the first Mishnah in the parak, it's the second Mishnah in the parak. So if you like looking up Mishnayos, you can look up in the 7th parak of Masechah Shabbos, the second Mishnah there. But if you want to look it up in a Gemora, because every Gemora has the Mishnah in it, right? And it will also have, Gemora that described it, explains it. It has a Rashi there as well to explain it. So it's very good to look it up in the Gemora even. You find it on Daf Ayin Gimel. Okay, which also 70 is like 7, right? Ayin Gimel means 73. So you have that 7 again. The Mishnah is 7.2, 7th parak, second Mishnah. The Daf is 73. So there are ways of remembering these things if you make little games with yourself. I have another game for remembering it, which is that what's the big mitzvah on Shabbos that's the most enjoyable part of Shabbos? Oneg Shabbos. Right? Ayin Gimel is almost the complete word of Oneg. Of course, it's missing a nun. But basically, it has the ayin and the gimel there. Oneg is ayin nun gimel, and this is ayin gimel. So, I guess the way to have real oneg is to know these 39, so you know what you can do and what you can't do. The worst thing is to think something's usher when it's really mutter. But of course, even worse than that is to do something thinking it's mutter when it's really usher. But anyhow, okay, so I really do recommend you go through those 39 because that's the basis of every Shabbos. The Mishnah Berurah brings at the beginning of his explanation of Hilchos Shabbos, which with the Mishnah Berurah, which one is the one that speaks about Hilchos Shabbos, right? Which Mishnah Berurah? Chelik. You know how it works, the Mishnah Berurah. He follows along the Shulchan Aruch, but it's all in the first section of the Shulchan Aruch, which talks about day-to-day halachas.
Yeah.
So, but he has it divided into 6 sections. He took him 27 years, I think, to write the whole thing. It's a monumental work. The third one is the one for Shabbos, right? First one is more like when you get up in the morning and davening, and the second one is mostly the halachas of the Suda and halachas of brachas, food items. The third one is almost all Hilchas Shabbos. Even the fourth one is halachas of, I think, an Eruv and stuff like that. They're both. And then the last 2 are Pesach is the 5th, and I think Yom Tov is the 6th. Whatever. So it's interesting also, the third chelik is Gimel, so we're saying Ayin Gimel, it's also Gimel. Anyhow, okay, so this is a malacha, right? This is a malacha called Soiser. Okay? It's one of the 39 malachas.
Destruction.
Right? Destruction. So, the Gemora is asking about Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah, that he went farther than the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama just said if somehow a hole develops in the wall, you're allowed to take out the fruit that was on the other side of that wall. But Rabbi Meir actually goes one step further and he says, what? You're allowed to take apart the wall. Which the Gemora immediately asks, how can you do that? It's one of the malachas. You can't just go ahead and do a malacha just because there's food on the other side of the wall. So the Gemara answers, as we've already said a few times, that it's a special kind of a wall. It's what? Bricks that are what?
Range.
Just laid one on top of the other to look like a wall.
Without cement.
Without cement, right? So therefore they're not sturdy and it's not permanent really. So therefore there's no malacha involved in taking apart that wall. That's first, okay, which is a nice halacha to know, just in general. But that only solves half the problem, the Gemora says, because there's another problem still that we don't understand how Rebbe Meir could let you do it if those bricks that you're taking apart are muksa, right? Because it's not enough just that I didn't do a malacha. I have to make sure I also am doing things the right way as far as even Yisur and Rabbanan. So how can he let you take apart that wall? Maybe it's not a malacha deraisa, but it's still a problem of muksa, isn't it? Which would explain why the Tanna Kama didn't say you're allowed to take apart the wall. He just said if it happens to develop a hole somehow or other, you're allowed to take out the fruit. But he never said you're allowed to take apart the wall. We're saying now, fine, taking apart the wall is not a malacha, but it should be a problem of muksa. Those bricks are part of a building. And we ended up proving that it's muksa. That's what we really use Rav Nachman, right? This whole thing about Rav Nachman telling you if it's strewn about. It's one halacha, they're stacked neatly. There are other halacha. That was all to prove that what? Bricks that are designated for a building are muksa. You see from Rebbe Meir clearly. So it's almost like a kol shekain. If bricks that are just stacked nicely on each other but waiting to be put into a building are muksa, kal v'chomer, bricks that are already part of a wall should be muksa. So that's what Rebbe Meir is coming to answer up. So again, remember, Rebbe Meir is the one who's under attack. Rebbe Zeir is not coming to defend him. And the basic defense has to be, you brought Reb Nachman against me, I can put Rebbe Meir in one place and Reb Nachman in another. To answer up your question of how could Rebbe Meir kind of go against Reb Nachman, even though we said the other day, it's kind of ironic that Rebbe Meir was earlier and Reb Nachman is later. We shouldn't have to defend Rebbe Meir. Why were you not like Reb Nachman? But apparently everyone accepted Reb Nachman's halacha, so it still has to be answered up. How could Rebbe Meir have let you do something that we see from Reb Nachman is clearly asa? So you have to say no. They're talking about two different situations, right? That's often how we resolve issues in the Gemora. We say, oh, it might look like a contradiction to, but they're talking about two different situations, right? It's like saying that's Chutz La'aretz and this is Eretz Yisrael. Sometimes because in Chutz La'aretz you have one way of doing it, in Eretz Yisrael you have a different way. If we find some reason to say they're two separate situations, often that can answer up the question. So what was the real question? How can Rebbe Meir say you're allowed to remove the bricks in the wall? But Reb Nachman clearly said it's Asur, and everyone seemed to agree with Reb Nachman. It's so how can he do it? So comes along Rebbe Zeir and says what? Let's go back to Rabbi Zera now and understand
Because
this
how
wording.
could Reb say that they move it? It's a total move.
Nachman said that's muksa. Anything that's designated for a building is muksa. So the Gemara's question is, Rabbi Meir is saying you can actually take bricks that are in a wall out. Yeah. How can you take it out? These are mamish designated for a building. They're not just designated to build it tomorrow into a building. They're part of a building. So how can Rabbi Meir have let you do this? So Rabbi Zera says, I'll tell you very simply, and then it needs more explanation, okay? But simply speaking, the real answer is what? In a nutshell, Amar Rabbi Zera, the Yom Tov, what? Amaro. Right? Now we know it's Amro and not Amru, because we're talking about Rabbi Meir. Amru would mean they said. We're not talking about a group of people. The main one we want to know about is Rabbi Meir here. So he's saying, don't worry about Rabbi Meir. You know what? He said his little shtickle Torah, his little halacha there, letting you take apart the wall, he said it on Yom Tov. Remember that. And Reb Nachman, when he talked about the bricks being a problem, he was talking on what?
He was talking on Shabbos.
On Shabbos, right? And I think Rosh is going to have to be the one to explain why that's true, that it makes a big difference. But right, and now the Gemora proves it that there is such a distinction between Yom Tov and Shabbos in this respect, because the Gemora brings a Beitsa Tanya Nami Hachi. But before we get to that, so what's Rabbi Zera really answering? It's true, Reb Nachman said that what the bricks that are designated for a building are what? Muksa. They're usur, they're muksa. You can't move them, they're muksa. But he spoke on
Yom Tov.
not Reb Nachman, who said that you can't move them. He was speaking on. If you go back to Reb Nachman's statement, you know what he said?
Shabbos.
That's right, B'Shabbos. He was talking on
Shabbos.
Shabbos. So it's true, they are muksa. They might even be muksa on Yom Tov, but the time that he said you can't move them is on Shabbos. And Rabbi Meir said you can move them when?
Could move them on
On Yom Tov. But who cares? Shouldn't the halachas be the same? Even though we did see at the beginning of the Masechta, it is possible that the halachas of muksa might be slightly different on Shabbos and Yom Tov. There was such a suggestion at the beginning of the Masechta, but assuming that halachas of muksa will be the same, so then what is he really saying? Why is Rabbi Meir allowing you to take apart this wall? Oh, you need to daven mincha? Yeah. I should have been davening. You should have left the door open, sorry.